Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe and turn on notifications. Leo Vance began to speak. His voice was unnervingly steady, the way a man recites facts he has memorized to perfection. It was the voice of a financial risk analyst, a professional trained to identify structural weaknesses before they caused a collapse. At 36, he had built his entire life, his entire identity, on the principle of sound investment and predictable outcomes. He believed in solid foundations, in numbers that didn't lie, and in relationships built on the same transparent logic. The marriage lasted 9 years. He started. His eyes were fixed on a point on the far wall of the sterile office. We lived in Amsterdam, in a third-floor apartment overlooking the Brouwersgracht Canal. It was a good asset, structurally sound. He spoke of his wife, Faye. He met her when she was 23, a whirlwind of ambition and artistic flair, working as a junior curator. Now she was 32. Even when describing their first meeting, his language was that of an auditor. She was a high-potential asset, he explained, without a trace of irony. Creative, connected, with a portfolio of charisma that seemed, at the time, to be a solid diversification for my own, more conservative life. For the first 5 or 6 years, the investment paid dividends. He would recount their weekends, but he listed them like transactions on a statement. Trips to The Hague, to see the Vermeers, cycling through Vondelpark on crisp autumn mornings, dinners at small, expensive restaurants, where Faye knew the owner. He spoke of her career, her rise as a sought-after consultant, with a detached pride, the way one might speak of a stock that had outperformed the market index. But his memory, as it was channeled, exposed the cracks he was only now willing to acknowledge. He would recall how Faye's laughter, once a sound that filled their apartment, began to sound performative. It was louder at gallery openings, surrounded by artists and critics, than it was in the quiet of their living room. Her work became more demanding, Leo stated. A clinical explanation for a creeping emotional void. There were more events, more late-night networking sessions, more trips to Berlin for art fairs, to London for auctions. I encouraged it, he insisted. It was a necessary part of her business model. You must spend capital to acquire capital. Yet, behind that rationalization, a different memory surfaced. He remembered standing by the window, watching her get into a taxi, dressed in a sleek black dress he hadn't seen before. He had felt a tremor then, a risk he couldn't quantify. He had noticed her new preoccupation with her phone, the way she would smile at the screen, with an intimacy he realized had been absent between them for months. He saw these not as signs of betrayal, but as anomalies in the data, deviations from the expected returns of his marital investment. He tried to engage, to understand her world. She would answer with a vague, dismissive wave of her hand. It's complicated, Leo. You wouldn't find it interesting. He did find it interesting. He found it threatening. Her world was one of subjectivity, of emotion and interpretation. His was a world of concrete numbers, and clear-cut profit and loss. He began to feel like a foreigner in his own home, an investor, locked out of the boardroom of his primary asset. I trusted her, he said. The words fell flat in the quiet room. But the statement was a lie. And he knew it. Trust wasn't the right word. He had monitored her. He noted the frequency of her late nights, the names of colleagues she mentioned too often, the scent of unfamiliar perfume on her coat. He was a risk analyst. And for the last 2 years of their marriage, Faye had been reclassified in his mind. From a blue-chip stock to a volatile, high-risk security. He was just waiting for the crash. The crash came on a Tuesday night in early November. The rain was lashing against the tall windows of their apartment, the wind howling down the canal. He found Faye curled on the sofa, a picture of distress. As he told the story, Leo's analytical tone became sharper, colder. He was dissecting a memory, not reliving it. Her eyes were red, he recalled. Her hands were trembling as she held a teacup. But the tremor, it was too consistent, too rhythmic. As an analyst, I'm trained to spot fabricated patterns. This one felt rehearsed. He sat down. leaving a careful distance between them. He asked what was wrong, his voice a calibrated instrument of concern. And then, the performance began. Tears streamed down her face as she confessed. She was in debt. Deeply in debt. The words tumbled out. A narrative of professional struggle. The art market was fickle. A major client had pulled out. To maintain her reputation, she had been forced to make significant investments. 40,000 euros, she finally whispered. The number hanging in the air between them. Leo described his reaction with chilling detachment. He felt a tightening in his chest, yes. But it wasn't the shock of a loving husband. It was the cold thrill of an analyst, whose dire predictions were finally coming true. The anomaly in the data now had a name and a number. I listened in silence, he recounted. I let her finish the entire narrative. I noted the details she chose to include, and more importantly, the ones she omitted. It was a purely emotional appeal, designed to bypass logic. But Leo didn't operate on emotion. He saw this as a critical juncture. A stress test. He could cut his losses. Or he could double down. Inject capital. And see if the asset could be stabilized. His ego, more than his heart, made the decision for him. He would be the savior. He would fix this. It would re-establish his control. I told her we would handle it, he said. I told her we were a team. He described how he went to his computer, logged into his personal investment account, and began to liquidate a portion of his portfolio. He had an emergency fund, 30,000 euros. He had another 15,000, earmarked for a down payment. He transferred the money, 40,000 euros, sent directly to her personal account. A fresh start. He then recounted her reaction. The flood of relief. The gratitude. She called me the best husband in the world, Leo said. A bitter smile touching his lips for the first time. She said she didn't deserve me. She promised she would spend the rest of her life, making it up to me. It was a flawless performance. The delivery was impeccable. But I knew, even then, that I wasn't funding her recovery. I was funding her exit strategy. The morning after the transfer was cold and unnaturally quiet. Leo woke at his usual time, 6 a.m. He turned over. But the space in the bed was empty and cold. Not just recently vacated cold, but a deep, settled coldness. As if no one had slept there at all. The initial silence wasn't alarming, he recounted. It was the quality of the silence that was different. It was absolute. An absence of energy. He got up and dressed for work. He went to the kitchen to make coffee. He called her name. The only response was the echo of his own voice. He checked the bathroom. Empty. He walked to the small second bedroom she used as an office. Her laptop. Gone. The stacks of art books and catalogs. Vanished. The corkboard, usually covered in notes and images, was completely bare. That was the first concrete data point, he stated, indicating a planned event, rather than a spontaneous departure. It was a systematic removal of professional assets. His heart began to beat faster then. The feeling just before a major market downturn. Dread and adrenaline. He returned to their bedroom and pulled open the doors of her closet. It was half empty. Her favorite dresses, her shoes, her coats, all gone. He checked the top drawer of her dresser. Completely empty. Save for a single, forgotten earring. He grabbed his phone and called her, directly to voicemail. He sent a text. Where are you? Are you okay? No reply. The green delivered checkmark felt like a mockery. He found the note on the kitchen table. It wasn't a letter full of anguish or explanation. It was a small, square piece of paper, with 4 words written in her elegant script. I need some space. Leo described staring at those 4 words for a long time. It wasn't an apology, he said, his voice hardening. It was a corporate memo. Estérile. Impersonnel dismissal. Space. After I had just liquidated my own financial security for her. The audacity of it was structurally impressive. He did not go to work that day. He was paralyzed by a cold, calculating rage. He sat in the silent, empty apartment. He wasn't a husband whose wife had left. He was an investor who had been defrauded. The personal feelings were secondary to the professional insult. He had been played. He, Leo Vance, the man who saw every risk, had missed the one brewing in his own home. Or worse, he hadn't missed it. He had seen it, documented it, and still allowed it to happen. The humiliation was a physical weight. By nightfall, the passive analysis was over. It was time for active investigation. Leo's grief had fully crystallized into a singular, cold objective. He needed confirmation. He needed the full, unvarnished truth. Not for emotional closure, but for leverage. He went to the shared desktop computer in his study. "We had a joint email account for household bills," he explained. "She was careless. She assumed I never looked at the archived folders." He clicked through the mundane history of their shared life. Then he found it. A folder labeled Projects. He opened it. Inside was a history of betrayal, documented with digital precision. A chain of emails between Faye and a man named Reese, a photographer she'd mentioned in passing. Leo began to read. The early emails, from nearly 2 years prior, were cloaked in professionalism. But Leo, scanning for subtext, saw the true narrative. He saw the shift in tone. From "Dear Faye" to just Faye. And then, to nothing at all. He opened a more recent message, dated just 3 weeks before her disappearance. It was from her. To Reese. "I can't keep living this lie anymore. The money is almost sorted. Soon, we can be together. We can finally be free." Free, Leo repeated the word in the quiet office, his voice laced with venom. A synonym for free from me. And the money she was sorting, that was my money. The 40,000 euros. It was never for debts. It was her seed capital, for a new venture. A new life. The pieces fell into place. With brutal, mathematical certainty. The late nights weren't for networking. They were for Reese. The business trips weren't for business. They were for him. The carefully constructed story of her financial ruin was the most elaborate lie of all. He kept digging. He found travel confirmations for 2 Danau, to a hotel in Bruges. He found receipts for expensive gifts, sent to Reese's studio address. The evidence was overwhelming. Irrefutable. He felt a wave of nausea, quickly suppressed by a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. He needed more. He needed a location. He picked up his phone and called Jenna, Faye's closest friend. She answered, her voice wary. "Leo? Is everything okay? Where is she, Jenna?" Leo's voice was calm, controlled, but carried a deadly weight. There was a long pause. I don't know if I should say anything." "Don't protect her," Leo snapped, the control momentarily slipping. "She took 40,000 euros from me and disappeared. She's with a man named Reese. I know everything. I just need to know where." Another silence. Then a heavy sigh of defeat. "Look. He's a photographer. Reese Camden. He has a studio. A live workspace in the NDSM Wharf area." That was it. The final data point. He thanked her curtly and hung up. He was already grabbing his coat and car keys. He wasn't going there for a tearful reunion. He was going to confront a business partner who had defaulted on a contract, in the most egregious way imaginable. He was going to look the fraud in the eye. The drive to the ferry terminal was a blur. Leo's mind was a silent engine of fury. Processing data, rehearsing lines, preparing. He felt no sadness. Only the cold, clear purpose of a man about to foreclose on a bad debt. The NDSM Wharf was a former shipyard. A gritty, trendy hub for artists. He found Reese's studio on the 2nd floor of a renovated shipping container complex. The windows were lit. He could see shadows moving inside. He walked up the external metal staircase, his footsteps echoing in the night. He knocked on the door. 3 hard, precise raps. The door opened. A man appeared. Tall, with a carefully groomed beard, and the kind of effortless style Leo had always despised. It was Reese. He looked at Leo with mild confusion. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Faye," Leo said. His voice was flat. Reese's expression shifted instantly. From confusion, to recognition. Then to a flicker of panic. "Look, I don't think." "Don't lie to me," Leo said, taking a step forward, forcing Reese to step back. I know she's here. I'm not leaving until I speak with my wife. Reese hesitated, then glanced over his shoulder. Faye, he called out, his voice strained. Someone's here. Faye appeared from a room at the back of the studio. When she saw Leo, all the color drained from her face. She looked small and guilty. Leo, she whispered. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, he replied, stepping past Reese and into the studio. He took in the scene. Expensive camera equipment. Large, abstract paintings. A sleek, modern kitchen. A nice setup, he remarked with a cold smile. I assume my 40,000 euros helped with the down payment. You can't just barge in here, Reese started. Leo ignored him completely. His eyes locked on Faye. How long? He asked. She looked away. Leo, this isn't the time. How long? He repeated, his voice rising, the calm facade finally cracking. Almost 2 years, she admitted, her voice barely audible. Leo let out a short, bitter laugh. 2 years, he echoed. 2 years you were sleeping in my bed, eating my food, spending my money. All while, you were with him. It wasn't like that, she protested weakly. Then tell me what it was like, Faye, he shot back, taking a step closer. Explain the part where you cried in my living room. Sign, about debts you didn't have. Explain how you staged a financial crisis to drain my accounts, before you ran off. Was that his idea? Or did you come up with that little piece of theater all on your own? The silence was her confession. He turned his attention to Reese. And you, Leo said, did you know she was married? Reese cleared his throat. She told me you were separated. That it had been over for a long time. Separated, Leo mused, nodding slowly. That's interesting. Because 2 days ago, she was sleeping next to me. The day before that, she was thanking me for saving her from financial ruin. Does that sound separated? To you? Reese looked at the floor. Leo turned back to Faye, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. You used me. You used my trust, my work, my money, to fund this fantasy life with him. You manipulated me. You defrauded me. And you ran. That's not just infidelity, Faye. That's a crime. I was going to pay you back. She sobbed. Pay me back? He scoffed. With what? The profits from his blurry photographs. You never planned on coming back. You planned to disappear. He stood directly in front of her now. The rage boiling over. I gave you 9 years of my life. I built a world for you, a stable, secure world. And you burned it to the ground. For him. Why? The question hung in the air. Because I didn't love you anymore. She finally screamed, the words erupting. I haven't loved you in years. I felt trapped, Leo. Suffocated by your spreadsheets and your risk assessments. He makes me feel alive. The words should have destroyed him, but he felt a strange sense of peace. It was the final admission of guilt. The brutal, honest data point he had been seeking. He nodded. Processing it. He stepped back. Fine, he said quietly. You didn't love me. I can accept that. But you didn't have to steal from me. He walked to the door, pausing to look at Reese one last time. Good luck with her, he said, his voice dripping with contempt. You think you've won some prize. But you've just taken on a high-risk, depreciating asset, with a proven history of fraud. I hope you have good insurance. He left without looking back. He had his confession. Now, it was time for the recovery. The following Monday morning, Leo was in the polished mahogany office of a divorce attorney, laying out his case with the precision of a prosecutor. The legal battle was, for Leo, a welcome return to a world he understood. A world of contracts, evidence, and consequences. He followed his lawyer's instructions to the letter, ignoring the barrage of pleading texts and voicemails from Faye. In court, his cold, factual testimony was devastatingly effective. The ruling was swift and severe. Faye was ordered to repay 30,000 euros. She lost any claim to their apartment. And she was ordered to cover a significant portion of Leo's legal fees. News of the scandal spread quickly. Faye's reputation was destroyed. Her relationship with Reese could not survive the harsh reality. He ended it a few months after the court case. Leo described this outcome with a grim satisfaction. The market corrected itself, he stated. She was an overvalued asset, propped up by fraudulent claims. The crash was inevitable. In the year that followed, Leo methodically rebuilt his life. He sold the apartment, stating it was no longer a performing asset. He moved to a modern, minimalist apartment in the Zuida's financial district. He threw himself into his work, earning a promotion and a significant bonus. About a year after the divorce, he attended a financial conference in Frankfurt. He met a woman named Katrin, a data scientist from Zurich. She was intelligent, logical. They began seeing each other. It was a cautious, carefully managed process. He did not rush. He told himself he had learned his lesson. He analyzed her behavior, her finances, her social circle. He needed to see her balance sheet before he would ever consider a merger. One evening, months into their relationship, Katrin was late coming home. She sent a text saying she was delayed. Leo saw the message. And for a moment, an old, familiar chill ran down his spine. He felt the tightening in his chest. The surge of adrenaline, the cold suspicion. He fought it down. He reminded himself that he was in control now. He had built stronger walls, better security protocols. He had learned from his loss. The recording ended there. Leo sat back in his chair. His story complete. He believed he had won. He believed he had recovered his losses and rebuilt his life on a more secure foundation. But the silent observer of his tale knew the truth. He hadn't rebuilt. He had simply fortified his prison. He had come out of the wreckage not stronger, but harder, colder, and utterly alone in his fortress of logic. He had learned that the person you most need to save is yourself. But in doing so, he had saved himself from the possibility of ever truly living again. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.